My name is Jacqueline Zimmerman. I'm a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, and I'm also a certified professional counselor. I've been working in the field of addictions and mental health for the last 25 years. I've worked in settings such as death row. I've also been a person who worked in prisons with persons who had severe problems and depressions and mental health problems that they had to be placed into a observational room, and I've had to observe them that were suicidal. I've worked in inpatient, outpatient, psychiatric hospitals. I've also worked for the Department of Corrections, Department of Probation and Parole, and I've also worked in situations where in outpatient and I've worked in inpatient, working with patients with substance abuse and mental health problems. In my quest to do this, I have found that many people are unable and do not know exactly how to interrupt and to get rid of and work through a relapse. Most people tend to relapse quite often, and this causes more and more problems for them. The purpose of your class will be focused on a group process where you will work as a group team. You'll work as a team in a group. And in this group process, your goal will be to develop and create a simulated situation in which you find a person in your mind or your experiences that has been an addicted person. Let me ask you this question. How many of you come from the substance abuse field? And what field is that?
I believe I'm right now just a junior, just freshman in college, so I'm still trying to decide which field.
Okay. So you're a college student. What are some of the other fields the other two of you come from?
Media.
Media.
Military.
Military. So we also would like you to look at in this class how you can apply issues of addiction to your fields. Because majority of the people in our world today are going to come in contact with some form of a person with an addiction, especially as we go through the COVID-19 process. Many people are going to be sitting at home in dark places trying to overcome addictions, or many will begin an addiction. You've already gotten your grading packets in terms of how your grades will be. Is there any questions about that? You had those before class started.
No.
So you just know how your class will be graded on a normative scale.
On the community learning and Rubik system.
Yes.
Yep, we're good.
Okay. Here is the rest of our class and what we will be doing. We're now going to look at a short film on relapsing. You'll look at your definitions on addiction and relapse, addiction in the brain, step to interrupted or relapse, creation of a group, simulation, and a group discussion after this. Any questions on that? Basically, I put up some statistics that you can read, but I just want to highlight that there are more alcoholic-related deaths than there are HIV. And as we're in this COVID situation, can you imagine how many people will relapse with no contact with others, and that they're out there in the world in this deep, dark place where they're used to contacting people that keeps them in their sobriety. But without the COVID, we still are looking at alcohol deaths being higher than HIV. We also want to look at statistics for illicit drugs. I just want to highlight, as you're reading over these statistics, that illicit drug use and overdoses, usually not always ending in death, but overdoses occur in 2017 more than road accidents. So here we are with another epidemic. Here we are with another pandemic, along with our COVID-19. And the two of them have some similarities in terms of their biological functionings. American Society of Addictive Medicine, they define addiction as follows. I'm going to ask you to take a minute and read that. Great. Now, here's a definition of a relapse. As you see this picture of a guy sitting there contemplating, should I use or should I not? With a drink in his hand. to give you 2 short videos on clean and sober that were done by Michael Keaton back in 1988, and then they've done some revisions of it here. I would like you to compare and contrast as you watch this movie. I would like you to compare and contrast what happened to him and his addiction, and what was he like in his recovery. What are the similarities and what are the differences?
God knows what we got going next month. But if it's anything like this last one, Jesus Christ.
But don't you get too tight. Don't wanna tie no. I'm tying it up now. I'm tying it up now. Tying it up.
Fine! You want me out of here? About a month ago, I had a few problems. And I figured the only way to deal with these problems was to disappear. One of the problems was I didn't have any money. So I asked myself, where could a guy go, be totally anonymous, and get somebody else to pay for it? Well, the answer I came up with was pretty brilliant. I figured what I would do would be I would check myself into a drug clinic. And the only trick was I had to convince the people in the drug clinic that I was an addict. So I sat in front of the place in my car and had a couple of beers. And I figured out all the language and all the gestures and moves so that I could give this really convincing performance. And somehow I did. And you fools bought it. And now, it's 30 days later, and I've been to a funeral. I've been to about 9 million job interviews. I'm $52,000 in debt.
Okay. Now, here is 30 days later, and in the first film you watched, you saw that he was an active addict, and then 30 days later, he is in dire straits and come to realize that he is a recovering addict and he's in need of help as he gets his 30-day chip. As you compare and contrast these two, what do you see?
In the first video, it was showing him like drinking and driving. And then in the next video, it was showing him, you know, realizing his actions.
Was he in control in the first video?
He thought he was, but by the second video, he realized he wasn't.
Okay. Anybody else?
I agree with exactly what he said.
Okay.
Yeah, in the first one, he seemed like he was more in the moment of the addiction, and then the next one, he seemed more repentful.
Okay. All right. I want to ask ask you this question. I'm asking the three of you to talk among yourselves for about 30 seconds here. And that question is addiction more biological or more psychological? If you all can try to answer that question among yourselves. If you take a few seconds, and Devin, if you can just kind of move over a little bit.
What do you think? Do you think that it is in the brain, or you think it's like biological? Or
Well, I believe that it's a little bit of both, the psychology and the biology of both. Really, they tie into each other. You know, it psychologically affects your emotions in your brain and your memory, and biologically it can affect your how your brain reacts and what it needs, what it craves. You know.
Yeah, I feel that too.
Okay.
I agree.
So, you sounds like the three of you have come up with an agreement that is more what? Biological or more psychological?
Biological.
More biological?
Yes.
Is that agreement among the three of you in your discussion? I agree with you. Now let's take look at a reason why. Let's look at addiction in the brain. Dr. Gupta gives us a brief explanation of the addiction
Whitney
in the brain.
Houston's death has us talking about her fight with addiction for so many years, and we don't know if it played a role in her death, but we do know that for more than 23 million Americans fighting addiction, quitting, it's just not a matter of willpower. New research actually reveals that substance abuse causes lasting changes in brain function. We're going in depth this morning with our host of Sanjay Gupta, MD. Sanjay Gupta, our resident doctor, the list goes on. You do everything basically. All right, let's talk about your piece. And I guess, why did you choose, this is your expertise, the function of the brain.
What exactly the brain looks like in someone who has addiction, who's going through this, is a pretty remarkable thing. I think it gives us a lot of insight into how it should best be treated and to also understand it. That's what I'm trying to do here. I want to explain a couple of things quickly. First of all, this idea that someone has some sort of anticipation of taking a substance, that's sort of the first step. But then there are two important steps after that in the brain. And stick with me here. So imagine, for example, as you take a look at this animation I'm about to show you, that someone takes a drug of some sort. What happens there, and this is the middle of the brain, is that there is a sense of euphoria. That's dopamine there, those small little particles. That makes you feel good.
Is it any kind of drug? We're talking everything from cocaine to Xanax.
Yeah,
anything.
Just about any kind of drug, and not even drugs necessarily. It can be other things too, certain food substances. Sugar, for example, there can be a certain addiction quality. But I think what's important is the next step. So you have that euphoria, but in someone who's a true addict, take a look at this picture here. On the left side of the brain you see the bright areas? That's still feeling good. That's the euphoria. But on the right side is someone who has an addiction now, not as much of that bright spot, and that is relevant. Why? Because they need more and more of the substance to try and get that euphoria back. Think about that for a second. You take the substance, you feel good, but in an addict, that good feeling doesn't last. So what do? You take more than ever before. And that's sort of the basic, sort of simplistic, but basic form of addiction.
Are those changes permanent?
Well, they last a long time. And exactly how long is a little bit of a subject of...
Okay. So you can see that that addiction and relapse go hand in hand simply because in addiction and in relapse we have brain involvement. So it appears to be more biological. So one can say that we can use that model called the biological or the medical model in order for us to understand addiction. Now, there are steps we can take in interrupting a relapse. Do you believe that can happen?
Yes.
At what point?
Before.
Before?
Preventative. Has to be preventative.
Preventative?
Yes.
Okay.
Preventing it doesn't make it creates it not happening. So stop before it even starts.
Stops before you start?
Stop it at the cravings.
Okay. So you do believe that a relapse and addiction are caused from biological consequences?
Correct.
Correct.
Great. Okay. So, but at what point, when Dr. Gupta talked about the brain being dark here, being, light here, and being very, very dark over here, and he talked about the brain, how can between having a euphoria and becoming addicted, what can we do when those cravings come that can help us to stop.
Substitute a craving for a lesser craving that's not as destructive. Like, for example, instead of smoking something like a vape, that's pretty much the biggest trend right now for it.
Basically, teach them ways to deal with that feeling.
Yeah. Can you see learning something like this can help you in your businesses?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
In what ways?
Everybody who has an addiction needs help.
Well,
It's
a high amount of military and veterans die each year from substance or alcohol-related suicides,
Okay.
or using those to treat their PTSD or mental illnesses.
So the statistics are important. Understanding the brain is important. Now we're going to learn some steps. We're going to look at step 1. These are some steps that I have over the years developed in order to help people to interrupt. Primarily the problem is the thought processes with the brain. And as those neurons are firing and things are going on in the brain, we can interrupt that because addiction mimics what? Neurotransmitters inside of the brain. So, as Dr. Gupta talked about this side of the brain, when we're in euphoria, before we get over here and the neurons are firing and we're dealing with all types of our pleasure centers in the brain, we can mimic also those same addictive behaviors and change the thoughts. Do you believe that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask each of you to set up.
Okay.
Ask each of you to set up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I want you to close your eyes. I want you to picture a stop sign in your mind's eye. Your stop sign, you're going to stop in your tracks. So I'm going to ask you to stand up. And just stop where you are. Keep your eyes closed. And put out one of your hands in front of you. And just say stop.
Stop.
You're going to inhale now for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're going to exhale and say stop.
Stop.
Okay. And you're just going to stand there for a second. And then you're going to breathe. Breathe in. And you're going to breathe out. Next, you're going to look at a creative now. Now, I would like you to continue standing up. Okay? Because what we're going to do now is we're going to close our eyes again. And we're going to visualize a negative billboard of the consequences that cause you to relapse on alcohol and drugs, or someone you know, or something. Got that person?
Yep.
Now, you see them in a billboard. Now you're going to visualize a positive billboard of recovering consequences right beside it. So over here you got a negative billboard. And on the other side, you got a positive billboard of all of the things that you've done in your life that were positive. And then you're going to begin to run each billboard through your head and through your mind. Okay, you can sit down. Okay, you're going to run a billboard through your head and through your mind. It'll look something like this. Addiction, jail, pills, death. Recovery, you got good feelings, treatment. You got all these good things going. Here is John Daltrey. Here's Whitney Houston that they mentioned in CNN. These are their before shots, their after shots. And you see, you can come back to this. Okay? Now, and in step 3, what you're going to do is you're going to use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 model of relapse prevention. Close your eyes. Each of you. Think of 5 things you see around you.
Alright, I have 5 things, okay.
Think of 4 things you can touch around you.
Okay.
And now there's 3 things you can hear around you.
Air.
Okay? And then you're going to acknowledge 2 things you can smell around you.
Cigarette burns.
And then the rest of you?
Cars.
Cars. Acknowledge 1 thing you can taste around you.
The air.
Pie.
Devin?
Mint.
Huh?
Mint.
Mint. Okay. So you got air. Got mint. What are the 5 things you can do? 5 air, mint. What else?
We can see it, touch it, and feel it. Pretty much just cover our basic senses.
So 5 things you can see around you, Keenan. What are 5 things you can see around you?
Lamps, blinds, cars, clothes, and a laptop.
Okay, Corinne, acknowledge 4 things you can touch around you.
Keenan, the book, the computer, the chair.
Devin, acknowledge 3 things you can hear around you.
People's voices, the AC, and the refrigerator.
Okay, you're going to acknowledge 2 things you can smell around you.
My deodorant and pie.
You're going to acknowledge 1 thing you can taste.
The pie.
And typically for an addict, the first thing that they're going to say, I can taste the drug. Okay? Now, take a deep, long breath, all of you. And focus on your senses. And now just breathe. Now these steps can help you to reduce the risk of a relapse. You think you got this?
Yes.
Okay, so your next step is that you're going to leave me. You're going to come together, as the 3 of you, and you're going to create a scene, and you're going to come back to our class, and you're going to present your scene. You have 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to do this. Any questions? Your directions are here on the screen. Any questions?
No.
Okay, all right. See you in 5 minutes.
Just say the person I'm trying to touch. I'm trying to keep it away from me.
Man, I really have had a hard time not being able to smoke.
Corinne, you're not
cigarettes.
doing it yet. You're just talking it over right now. You got 5 minutes to come up with what you're going to do, and then you're going to have 3 minutes to present it. So you have 5 minutes to talk it over.
We got 5 minutes of film.
Talk it over. Don't worry about the film. Talk it over.
Let's do this skit about the cigarettes right there. And say, hey, I really want to smoke a cigarette, and you guys are like telling me to breathe so that I don't, and you visualize something else besides the cigarette. Blah, 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 blah.
Okay. Are you guys ready? Did each one of you figure out who's going to play what role?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I ask you to come back to the classroom. And I'd like you to present your role.
I will be the drug addict.
Okay?
And I will be his caring friend that's bringing him to a counselor.
Okay? And you're the counselor.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what you guys got.
Hello, gentlemen. How can I help you today?
I'm really concerned about my friend. He can't. He's having a relapse with smoking cigarettes, and he's really doing his best to stop.
Hi, how you doing today?
Hi.
Having a hard time with cigarettes?
No.
Well, I understand. Cigarettes are a really tough thing sometimes to get over, but the best thing you did was come here today. Did you know, before you actually smoked this cigarette right here, one of the best things you can do is think about all the joy that it gives you inside.
Yeah.
Close your eyes for me. And I want you to think about everything that makes you feel good. And I want you to hold it in and breathe and count to 3. Visualize that thing and let it out very, very slowly. Now, put your hand out, and I want you to count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let go of that breath. Exhale. Let your hand down, and let that idea go. Open your eyes. You feel better?
Wow.
You can do this every time you want this, and it'll save you from ever doing it.
Okay. Now that you all have done that, it was a wonderful job. Let me ask you something. What happened when the counselor said to you that you could put your hand out and you can so what do you guys get out of this?
I didn't think of that before, so I'm like, new idea, good idea.
New idea.
Yeah.
What happened in your brain, Keenan?
I didn't felt as needy. I felt, alright, I can stop this.
Visualizing a stop sign is like internally telling yourself that you need to stop.
Did you see a stop sign, Keenan?
Yes.
Did you get that from the class, or you just
From the class. I didn't
From-
think of that beforehand.
You didn't
Never
think
did.
of it beforehand?
Never did.
What were you thinking about, counselor, when you was giving out the instructions?
I was thinking that they needed tools. They needed tools to help them prevent the situation.
Do you think it was preventable?
Yes.
Yes.
What did you all, if you all could think about your class and review it all for today, what did you learn?
Just take a minute and breathe.
Take a minute and breathe, okay?
That you can help interrupt relapse by taking a minute to breathe, or just by showing people new ways.
So
to
breathing
do it.
is important
Mm-hmm.
to reduce the relapse. What about you, Devin?
I learned the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, which
Uh-huh.
I thought was really good because it doesn't take a counselor to teach that,
Okay.
and I could maybe help a friend that was going through an addiction by asking them the 5 phrases of what the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is.
Okay. And how does the 5, 3, 2, 1 play it out in your scenario?
It helped us to stop the addiction.
Yeah, it helped him calm down so he didn't want to smoke.
It brought him back to the real world.
What happened to his thought processes?
It took a minute
It's
to
numb.
change from the addictive pattern to like actually think.
To actually think. Okay. So, this is what I like to say. You think you got this?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Think you can use it?
Yes.
Yes.
In the military, how?
By preventing a possible veteran or active duty suicide or addiction and get him some actual help.
Okay. What about you?
To get people to calm down when they're working in film because their minds go crazy.
Okay. What about
For
you,
college
Keaton?
students, not to have like a 5-minute crisis and just like to breathe to avoid it.
Okay. So I want to say thank you. I hope that this was helpful for each of you. And now you have at least a 3-step method to what? Interrupt that active brain and to what?
The relax.
Interrupt and
A relapse.
stop the epidemic. Even if you're sitting at home with COVID, you can do something that can cause you not to relapse. Again, I want to say thank you. Did we get it?